Well, my friends, I am indeed fired up today. So, for better or worse, you get two bonus episodes on a Friday because I'm just burning with some stuff that I got to tell you. And on that note, let me make it clear that this episode is in no way about promoting any kind of discrimination. Absolutely not. This is about promoting equality and getting the folks who think that it's their job to discriminate against, or who maybe have good intentions but just misunderstand LGBTQ folks, to just think a little bit more deeply, think outside the box, and hopefully by the end of it, we will all get the well-deserved peace that we all actually want. But damn, my heart is in my mouth today. It really is, and I'm even holding the microphone extra close because I really want to make my point clear. So sit back, listen, don't get jumpy, don't get defensive, because I promise my intentions for anybody listening to this are to just bring peace. Just bring peace. And I hope that some of what I have to share with you today will bring that. And I want to start by saying Lord of the Flies by William Golding was one of my favorite books that I used to teach when I taught high school. And I taught it very regularly because the message of that story, and let me back up. If you've never read Lord of the Flies by William Golding, it's often overlooked because literally how it ends is with a bunch of 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys ripping each other apart, so it gets pretty gruesome. But God, does that author make a beautiful point. So to back up, what happens is it's a fictional story, but it was written during World War II to emphasize the author's very real concerns about the monstrous forms that humanity can take on, and that anybody, and I'll say that again, anybody is capable of becoming a monster if we don't have our priorities straight. So basically, the premise of this story is that these boys who go to a private school are on a plane and it crashes on a desert island, and the only adults involved are killed, so these boys are here by themselves. And they have to figure out how to survive, right? And they split off into two groups. Naturally, the villain of the story, if you want to call that, one of the boys named Jack, is rebellious, resistant to any kind of order, any kind of kindness, and kind of goes off on his own and makes his own group. And they turn wild and they make sport out of hunting and killing pigs, but then they get really gruesome about it and laugh as they stab pigs and think it's hilarious. And Simon, bless his heart, forever one of my favorite characters in a novel ever, is very philosophical. I know, shocking that I would like a philosophical character. But he starts to say to Ralph, who is the other leader of a different group, Ralph is meant to be the leader of them all. He's a little bit more logical. People kind of look to him as the leader because he's got, a little bit more of a head on his shoulders. He's a little bit more straightforward. And he befriends this young boy who I'll get back to Simon in a second. Sorry. He befriends this young boy who they call Piggy because he's overweight in their eyes and he has glasses. And Ralph kind of befriends him, but also joins in making fun of him with the other boys. But Piggy is the smartest one on the island. He knows how to make a sundial to tell the time. It was his idea. He knows he's very smart, but people just dismiss him and make fun of him because of what he looks like. Now, Simon, the philosophical one, sees that although Ralph is a flawed leader, and by flawed, I mean Ralph means well, but he gets caught up in some of Jack's bullshit. He gets caught up in some of the teasing and doesn't always take Piggy as seriously as he should. He messes around a little bit, doesn't take warnings seriously, but there are some good intentions there, and Simon knows of the two who've kind of assumed power, Jack and Ralph is going to be the one he wants to appeal to. So Simon sees how Piggy is being treated, and they even get to a point where they deprive Piggy of food because of what he looks like, and they make a joke out of it. And the boys slowly start to fear this mythical beast that they think is in the ocean. They start having nightmares and they think there's this monster on the island. But Simon gets very philosophical and tells Ralph, what if the beast is us? And he doesn't understand him. He laughs him off. And then the boys, as time goes on, they're getting crazier and crazier and just giving in to these wild things and teasing and hunting. And in this frenzy one night, they actually rip Simon to shreds because they mistake him for the beast. And the reason I teach that story to my students, how it ends up ending, spoiler alert, is they eventually get rescued, but it's after Piggy's murdered and it's after Simon's murdered. So these boys end up dying and starving, and before Ralph can see the error of his ways, that he should have protected Piggy, he should have stopped the name calling when it started, it was too late. He had lost everything. And the interesting thing is the little boys all start crying when they're rescued because they realize what they've done and that they've done these awful, horrible adult things and just lost their minds. And the reason I taught this story to my students is because Golding did a beautiful way of painting this picture of how dehumanization and bullying starts and how stupid it actually is to bully people, and how ultimately dehumanizing others will end in our own destruction. And what I mean is, Piggy, this boy who is incredibly intelligent, the author never even tells you his real name throughout the whole book, and I think that's intentional because the boys never really took the time to learn it. They only called him what he was bullied for, by the way, after he asked them not to. They decided, well, I think you're fat and you have glasses, so I'm just going to treat you like shit, even though he was the smartest one and just like any human being deserving of respect. Every human being is deserving of respect. But these boys picked out a couple traits on him that they didn't like, and from there it just grew. And folks, I have to tell you, wake up and take a look at humanity. That is how it starts. I don't like you because the color of your skin, or I'm intimidated by you because you have a vagina. You speak a different language than me, so you must be stupid. I don't understand why you're not a boy or a girl, so I have the right to tell you you don't belong. What the fuck? How have we not learned? Look at history. Look at it. What is the reason multiple people have been slaughtered throughout history or colonized? What is the reason? There is no good one, I can tell you that. The reason is the people doing the slaughtering justified it. You're different than me, and I don't understand you, so I have the right to do this. No. No, no, no. Come on. We should have evolved past this by now. And how I'm going to tie this to the whole gender thing, and what I'm talking about is all the discrimination that has been here for way too long and is now being glorified. There are only males and females, that's it. Grow up. Grow the fuck up, because guess what? Guess what? I'm a girl. Yep, I'm a girl. I bet that you can still pay your mortgage and go to the grocery store just like you were going to before. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody's gender does not actually matter. It really doesn't. What is happening is gender identity is being used as a tool for discrimination because it's easy, right? It's an easy card for those in power to play. Hey, let's target the people who don't understand other people's bodies and make it a thing. They'll follow us if we do. Come on. At the end of the day, how the hell does somebody else's gender actually fucking impact you? It doesn't. It really doesn't. But you know who it does impact? The person who might have a gender identity that's not accepted and is now being discriminated against and told they don't belong just because you don't understand their body. And by the way, it's not your business to understand their body. It's really not. Let me put this in perspective a little bit more. So, because really what this gender identity issue is skewed perspectives. It's skewed societal, cultural things, okay? So let me just talk a little bit more about gender identity in case people don't know what I'm talking about. There's lots of different words to describe gender identity, right? You could say that somebody is gender fluid, if they kind of go back and forth between stereotypically male and female gender identities, but sometimes it doesn't even mean that. It could just mean that they identify with gender fluidly and they just are who they are. Or you could think of the term transgender, and that's typically referred to somebody who was born either male or female, but they identify as the opposite, right? So like if I was born female, I would be trans if I identified as a male, right? So you get the basic idea, okay? At its core, gender identity just has to do with the things related to your body, your mannerisms, your voice, everything that you feel like fit you. So that's kind of what I mean by that. But let's think about this for a second. It's all a matter of skewed perspectives. And what you'll hear a lot of people who identify as trans or gender fluid say is the main reason that we're discriminated against is because folks just don't understand us. They don't understand what we are, and it freaks them out. And so it's easier to just kind of push us to the side. Again, I'm going to say it's really not your business to understand someone else's body, but also if this misunderstanding is leading to such discrimination, we need to address it. Let me ask you a question. Why are breast enhancements normal? You see a woman who's gotten a boob job and you might go, oh yeah, that looks trashy. You'd probably judge her for that. But you might go, oh yeah, she got a boob job. Okay. Millions and millions of dollars are put into that kind of thing. And people don't really bat an eye. It's like, well, yeah, of course she wants to make her boobs bigger. Who wouldn't? Nobody gives a shit if a woman makes her boobs bigger. That's accepted. Nobody gives a shit if people want to get Botox. Again, they'll probably be judged for it, like, oh, your face looks plastic now. But again, nobody bats an eye. There's clinics all over the place for breast enhancements, Botox, butt implants, cheek implants, all these things. It's quote unquote normal. Makes a lot of money. People don't bat an eye. So why is it such a big deal for a trans person to have a top surgery? And if you don't know what top surgery is, it's basically the removal of breasts. Okay, so like let's say somebody doesn't want their breasts. They don't identify with that feminine trait and they want to remove them. Why is that judged? Why is that an issue? Yet someone can blow up their boobs and it's perfectly acceptable. It's because of what's acceptable in society. And what's acceptable in society is for a woman to hate her body so much that she puts money into enhancing it. And for her to want to meet those unrealistic perfection expectations. What's not accepted is the fact that somebody maybe doesn't feel comfortable with the body they were born with. And so for their own sake, because they just want to feel like themselves, they get their breasts removed. Why is that a fucking issue? Why is that a topic of conversation? At the end of the day, let's just really wake up for a second. Why is gender being used as a reason to discriminate against people? Why? Somebody's body is their own business. Okay? It's their own business. It is not a reason to discriminate, and it is certainly not where we should put our priorities. It is not what we should be focused on. And it comes at such a high cost. And that is the lives of LGBTQ youth and adults. It comes at the cost of their sense of safety, and it shouldn't. Discriminating against somebody because you don't understand their gender, which again really isn't actually your business besides using the pronouns that they prefer, which really isn't that big of a deal. You learned he and she, why is it so hard to say they? It's not hard. Worrying about somebody's gender and using it as a reason to discriminate them is the same thing as Piggy being discriminated against because he wore glasses. I'm going to go ahead and say that. For years, people have been picking apart reasons why they can dehumanize people. Hitler said, no, you don't have blonde hair and blue eyes, you don't fit. Oh, you're Jewish, you don't fit. Stop. Enough. Gender identity is not a reason to discriminate against people. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't affect you. I read an article in my local paper where this local woman wrote in, because she has some issues with the local legislation about blocking, like right now, there's all kinds of political upheaval, right? And right now, the Republicans in my area are trying to put forth this legislation to not allow trans youth to participate in sports. And this woman wrote in supporting this. And what she said was, trans girls participating in sports creates an unfair disadvantage for those born as female. Trans kids should play with trans kids. Females should play with females. Like, enough. And that's so discriminatory in so many ways. And I had a secret for you, Brenda. That's not her name. I made it up, but it's Brenda, okay? Little Jenny didn't make the hockey team because she's not that great at hockey, not because a trans girl was playing, okay? God, like, it's not worth the cost of making trans kids feel targeted and unsafe. Let them play hockey. Who gives a shit? If you really want your kid to get a scholarship, have them practice more. Because the trans girl that's playing isn't going to be the reason Jenny doesn't get a D1 scholarship. You and Jenny are going to be the reason, okay? It needs to end. It needs to end. I'm gonna add that part of the reason why this has happened is because we need to take a look at our country, okay? Because the United States is very much about profit, right? About corporate America, about making money. We all know that people are out to get our money. And who gets our money? The beauty industry, right? That's a well-known fact by now. The more money we pour into plastic surgery, makeup, hair plugs, whatever, the more people profit off of all the ways that we don't think our bodies fit. Enough. Why are breast enhancements supported? Well, because sexism is supported. Women not being happy with their body, well, of course they're not. They suck, right? Like, oh man, yeah, there's so many flaws with women. I'm being sarcastic, by the way, just in case people didn't catch that. Women are so flawed. Of course they'd want to put money into their bodies. All the power to them. But again, a trans man who wants to remove their breasts, oh God, sin is invading us. No. Why are we so concerned about people having control over their bodies, but we're not concerned about what we put into ours? And here's what I mean by that. In addition to pouring millions into the beauty industry, we are not focused on the fact that if we are going to get worked up about people's bodies, if we're going to get opinionated about people's bodies, maybe we should be more concerned about what we put in our body. Why is it $8.99 to buy a carton of organic blueberries, but I can get hot dogs for $2? If you're going to get mad about people's bodies, get mad at that. Get mad at the fact that, especially in this country, cheap processed foods that are slowly killing us all are easily accessible. Yet organic food grown in the ground is extremely pricey. That's what we should actually be focused on if we're worried about people's bodies. We should be focused on the cost of food, and we should be focused on the fact that very few of us are ever taught how to grow our own food. Because I'm sorry, but look at the actual science. Study the Blue Zone. Study any of Dr. Zach Bush's work. He's an MD, by the way, who's made it a point to just study human health and how to actually prevent things like cancer and ADHD and all this stuff rather than retroactively treat it with radiation and a pill. And his actual scientific research will show you that, hey, the best thing that humanity can do for their bodies, one of them, is to grow their own food in healthy soil and eat it Same thing with the Blue Zones research, which I've referred to also. That was Dan Buettner's work, right? Where he went around the world and studied the 5 places that are the healthiest, where people live the longest, healthiest, happiest lives. And a common trait among them is they're growing their own food, and it tends to be vegetables. If we're going to get worked up about people's bodies, we should get worked up about that. We should have an issue with the fact that Takis and Twinkies and all this bullshit is so cheap and easily accessible, yet a carton of organic blueberries is nearly $9. That's what we should be getting upset about. That's what we should be focused on. We should not be focused on people's gender. We really shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, every human being deserves the right to decide how they feel comfortable in their own body. Not you, not me. Whoever the person is has the right to feel comfortable in their own body. And I beg of you, I beg of all of you out there, please wake up. Just take an honest look at it. Look at the situation. Discrimination is going to destroy us all. It has throughout history. Colonizing other people, discriminating against other people, dehumanizing other people doesn't actually serve anybody. It just creates more trauma and messes that the next generation has to try to clean up. When is it going to stop? When will humanity actually evolve? When will we evolve and learn from our history? I think one of the dangers of how I was taught in school is that I was taught all about the Holocaust, right? That is taught from a young age in American schools. Look at what the Germans did. And it was horrific, okay? It was. I will not deny that. But was I taught about the horrors that were committed at Fort Snelling in my very own state? Nope. I didn't learn about that till I was 35. And the horrors I'm referring to are the Dakota people from Minnesota, including children, being imprisoned at Fort Snelling, many outside, many of whom died and starved to death and because they were exposed to horrible conditions. And this was done to them by quote unquote Americans. I was never taught about that. I was taught about what the bad Germans did, not what my own people did. And because I wasn't taught about that, I didn't realize that I could become that. When we point the finger elsewhere and we say, look at the horrible things that these people did, we don't see the horrible thing that we could become. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell you, if we are all in a position where we are continuing to discriminate against LGBTQ people, we already are the monster, or we will become the monster. There are far better things to focus on than somebody's gender. Let's remember that we are all human beings. And we should maybe be focused on the gifts and talents and community that we can build together. Not pointing a finger at something we don't understand and saying we don't like it and using it as a reason to tell that person they are less than human. That's how it starts. That's how it starts. I was taught about slavery too. That's another thing that was so horrific in the US. You can't deny it, right? But the gaps that were missing in my education were, okay, slavery is over, but I didn't learn about police brutality until I was 30 years old and read All American Boys by Jason Reynolds. But I can tell you the Black Americans sure as hell knew what it was. Why weren't the white Americans taught about it? We have to open our eyes and look at the ways that we are discriminating against other people. We have to open our eyes and realize just enough. Let's evolve. Gender is not a good reason to discriminate against people. And again, if you want to get fired up about our bodies, get fired up about the cost of organic produce. Get fired up about the fact that we're not learning how to garden at school, okay? That's what we should be getting fired up about. Get fired up about the cost of prescription drugs. That's a whole other conversation. bless my dear friend, Nicole Smith Holt, who is fighting the good fight for access to insulin. That's a whole other episode in itself. But the point is, get fired up about the fact that this country makes it really hard for you to take care of your own body. Get fired up about that. Don't get fired up about the fact that somebody doesn't want boobs. So what? So fucking what? Let them live their lives. Let them look how they want to look. Now, I was born female, okay? My sex assigned at birth was female, and I continue to identify as female. So I can only, imagine what it's like to be gender fluid or trans from just imagining it. But hey, this is some empathy, okay? Empathy is great. If someone were to tell me, because I like being female, I like my female body, I want to remain female, and I'm happy with having female traits. But if somebody told me, hey, Jenna, you have to grow hair on your chest. You have to cut your hair and keep it short, like a man. You have to start wearing these thick, baggy pants. And, you got to let your armpit hair grow too. Because you really, that's the body that you were meant for. So grow hair under your pits, grow hair on your chest, cut the hair on your head, and start wearing baggy clothes, because that's what you're supposed to look like. That would be devastating for me. I don't want to look that way. I like being a woman. I want to stay a woman. How do you think trans people feel when they are told, no, you can't get rid of your breasts? No, you can't take these hormone replacement pills. You have to look like this. It makes me sick thinking about it. It makes me physically sick thinking that somebody thinks they have the right to tell me what my body should look like. Imagine if it was done to you. If you're listening out there and you're not trans or gender fluid, let's say you identify as a man. What if someone told you you needed to get breast implants and get rid of your penis? What if someone told you that? If you're a woman like me, what if someone told me you needed to get rid of your breasts, cut your hair? And by the way, if you do identify as a woman and you want to, get rid of your breasts, more power to you, by the way. Again, the point here is that everybody should have the freedom to have control over their body. They are the one who lives in it. And all of this discrimination is pointless, because at the end of the day, what's in somebody's pants doesn't affect you. Are you a creepy person who goes around looking in people's pants? Oh, okay. No? Well, then don't worry about it. What does affect you is the cost of fresh produce. What does affect you is the cost of prescription drugs. Those are maybe where you should put your attention. Let's work together to prioritize the right things. Let's focus on actually creating a safe space for all people who live in this country and around the world. Let's stop picking physical traits that we don't understand or claim we don't like and using it as an excuse to discriminate. We have to learn from our history. This whole, I'm right, you're wrong, you don't look like me, you don't talk like me, you don't love like me, so I get to kill you, has to fucking end. Humanity is better than that. We are so much better than that. And on that note, I would like to end this episode by reading a poem from one of my new favorite poets, Andrea Gibson. They are fantastic. Look them up. They are published primarily by Button Poetry, although there's a couple other publishers who've picked them up. I'm currently reading their book, You Better Be Lightning, and you can find it most places that books are sold. But again, this is You Better Be Lightning by Andrea Gibson. It's a little bit of a longer poem, but well worth listening to, so please buckle up and go on this ride with me. It'll be worth it for all of us. So this poem is called Queer Youth Are 5 Times More Likely to Die by Suicide. And I'm just going to let the poem speak for itself. But although I should say queer youth, that's kind of a blanket term to refer to anybody who falls on the LGBTQ spectrum. So it can refer to gay people, it can refer to trans people, it can refer to gender fluid people, basically anybody who doesn't necessarily identify as straight or cisgender, it kind of applies to. So again, this poem is called Queer Youth Are 5 Times More Likely to Die by Suicide by Andrea Gibson. Queer youth are 5 times more likely to die by suicide means you lived 5 times harder than you should have had to still have a body when you graduated high school. Means hate worked 5 times harder to make your spirit its wishbone. Means when your mother asked what was wrong, you were 5 times more likely to believe you'd lose her if you spoke the truth. Means you were told 5 times more often you'd go to hell when you died. Means burning for eternity seemed 5 times more doable than another day in the school lunchroom. Means you were 5 times more likely to triple padlock your diary. Means you were 5 times more likely to stop writing your story down. Means I write my heart out now. I graffiti billboards with the page of my diary that bullies used to start the rumors. I tie that page to the end of a kite string and run a crooked line through the straightest mile of the Bible Belt. That page is a protest sign. That page is a bandana washing the tear gas out of my lover's eyes. Queer youth are 5 times more likely to die by suicide means I sneak into fascist sleepovers and Sharpie my pronouns onto the faces of senators who voted to criminalize my kisses when I was 19. I cut the hate out of my mail and papier-mâché Christmas ornaments for queer couples whose parents do not want to know their grandchildren. I hack high school curriculums and delete every test that does not ask what the P in Marsha P. Johnson stands for. I walk through graveyards with a chisel, correcting the names of trans kids whose families said no when asked, "Can you just let me live?" I pace the suburbs with spray paint, editing the welcome mats of homophobes until they all speak the truth that they personally burned the roof over the heads of queer youth, are 5 times more likely to die by suicide. Means there are many days I thirst for my own silence but walk through the desert screaming instead because I, like most of my queer friends, don't have a child. I have millions. From Nebraska to Chechnya, to the Baptist church where I grew up. My pride in them is a parade I know won't keep all of them alive, but I keep cutting my diary into confetti to throw at their hopes. When they float by scared or furious or laughing or in love and desperate for the headline to say, queer youth are 5 times more likely to offer to walk their younger siblings home from school, to notice the different accents of sparrows, to find an eyelash and spend 20 minutes trying to pick what to wish for. 5 times more likely to never outgrow blanket forts, to know there is a word for the scent in the air after it rains, to see lifelines look like telephone wires and call a friend who's having a bad day. 5 times more likely to adore the last man who walked on the moon just because he wrote his daughter's initials there, to know there is no universe in which they would not be proud of their own children. Queer youth are 5 times more likely to see how you dream of seeing yourself, to write something in your yearbook that will get you through the next decade, to spot a stranger crying and ask if there's anything they can do to help. 5 times more likely to need us to do the same. Again, that's called Queer Youth Are 5 Times More Likely to Die by Suicide by Andrea Gibson from their book You Better Be Lightning. Fantastic read, by the way. I can't recommend them enough. To drive home their point, queer youth and queer folks in general are not suicidal by nature. They're really not. They are suicidal because of the discrimination, because of being rejected by their own families, because of being told they don't belong in their own skin. It's wrong. I'm going to just say it. It's wrong. And if you or anyone who you know are out there discriminating against people because of the bodies they need or who they love, you are going to destroy yourself from the inside out. Learn from history. Put your energy into yourself. Put your energy into becoming a more healthy human being so that you can allow other human beings to just live freely too. If you're spending time hating and discriminating against somebody else for what they look like, look at yourself. What do you hate about what you look like? And who told you a lie when you were younger? Put the sign down. Put the goddamn gun down. And look inward. And realize that if you are willing to accept and love yourself, and that other people deserve respect regardless of the body they identify with, we will all live a more healthy and happy life if we can just accept each other. Put our energy into the right things. Find out what actually matters about our bodies, and that's what we eat and how we exercise and our access to medication. That is what matters. That is where our energy should lie. And for the love of God, spread love, not hate. Thanks for coming.